KITE is an organization that coordinates regular artistic and cultural events in the UK, including the popular Somali Festival. They aim to contribute to the appreciation of the diversity of Somali culture through the education, writing, reading, and performances and discussions. KITE Somali Arts and Culture invites you to attend the third open talk with Professor Ahmed Samatar. Professor Samatar studied at Ahmed Intermediate and Secondary School in Norway. After finishing high school, Professor Samatar moved to Mogadishu, where he was accepted as a radio broadcaster at Radio Mogadishu in the mid-60s. He moved to London and served as a BBC broadcaster up until the mid-70s, when he decided to seek higher education. He had then moved to the United States. Dr. Ahmed Samatar, founding dean of the Culture Institute of Global Citizenship, has lectured at many universities and colleges, including Cornell, London School of Economics, and Ahmed, to name a few. His expertise is in areas of global political economy, political and social change, and Somali affairs. He is the author and editor of 5 books and over 30 albums. His expertise is in the areas. Additionally, Professor Samatar is the founding editor-in-chief of ILGA, one of the international journals of Somali studies. This afternoon, Professor Samatar will discuss the relationship between culture and development, and why it's important to preserve the art and culture in the face of an increasingly changing world. I'd like to invite Professor Samatar on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a big round of
yeah, that's good. That's the one.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Kareem. I am pleased to be here. When Ayan and I were communicating, I told her maybe a good way to do this discussion about the relationship between culture and development might be just to have a session of questions and responses. But she said, no, yeah? I want you to give a lecture, formal lecture on this. So I accepted the assignment, and I've been working on it really for the past 2 months. It's not yet complete, but I think, reasonably happy with it now to at least be ready to present it in front of the community in English. And I'm looking forward to your questions. Let me then begin by thanking Ayan and Hamoud for the warm welcome and their amazing organizational skills. I think inauguration of KITE is an important achievement. It's like raindrops in a desert, to be very honest with you, because there is nothing like this that exists anywhere where Somalis live, whether it is in the United States or in Canada or other parts of the world. At least I'm not aware of a place like this and activities like this. So it's an enormous initiative and a great achievement, and I want to congratulate her for doing this. I think from my point of view, a young Somali woman like Ayan portend a future that ought to be different than the present and the recent past, where our lives are mangled, and therefore we wish her long life, great blessings from Allah, and success as she continues this project of organizing these activities. I want to also thank those of you who have come here this afternoon. Ramadan is a very demanding month for Muslims. Long fast, a lot of work at the same time, family and other activities. So it's not easy, even on a Sunday, Ramadan day, to come at this hour. So I am very grateful that you have made the time to be here. And then finally, I'm not sure whether he is here, but there is a man in this city who has enormous place in my heart. He's now probably at least in his mid-80s, maybe even close to 90. Ahmed with 80. I don't know whether he's here today, but I would like to send word from this particular microphone that he's an enormous historical figure, and we continue to celebrate his standing among our Somali musical geniuses. Let me tell you then a little bit about how I want to proceed, kind of a menu of the lecture that I have in front of you, so that you have some sense of organizing your own understanding of this. What I will begin with would be some preliminary remarks that are not necessarily connected to the topic, but they set the tone and the context in which the topic then will be interrogated. So preliminary remarks and assertions. Second, then I would like to give a definition. In the academy, if you want to make sure that people understand you, even when they disagree with you, you have to define your concepts. That's the central basis of an academic discussion in the university. Yeah, you define your terms so that you know what I mean, and then you will see if that fits into your own thinking. If not, then maybe you can offer an alternative. But I want to make sure that you understand what I mean by development, which is a central concept, and culture, those two. And the two are very related. I'll say a lot about culture, but as it relates to development. So definition of the two primary concepts. Third, I would like to make a brief meditations on subtopics of culture. Culture is a huge enterprise. And even if we are here for 2-3 days, I cannot cover all the aspects of culture. But what I would like to do is to pick up few items that I think, at least from my point of view, are very important in talking about culture. And that is intellectual production, which is part of culture. That's number one subtopic I would like to engage somewhat. Two, I want to speak about music as an element of culture. Third, I want to then talk about poetry as another element of culture, and then religion as an important part of culture. These four items: intellectual production, music and music production, poetry, and religion. And then with some concluding remarks before I finish. So that's what the journey looks like. Now, some preliminary remarks then. Let me begin by saying that there was a time when Somali people, whether they are from Somaliland, or whether they are from Somalia, or whether they are from Djibouti, or whether they are from other parts of the Horn of Africa, Zone 5, the old Northern Frontier District, whatever the Somalis live, but particularly those who lived in the old republic. There was a time when these Somali people had important collective assets. For example, though the Somali people were always living in a very precarious environment, and therefore, in terms of material life, somewhat poor, and they continue to be poor and brittle. All you have to do is watch when rains don't arrive for 1 year, and everybody is in crisis, let alone 2 or 3 years. That's the degree of how brittle societies are. Yet they exuded a hardy sense of self-reliance and had faith in the coming of a better future. Strong capacity to persevere in the face of very difficult environmental and other kind of circumstances. And also a sense that tomorrow might be better or the next year might be better. They were always somewhat future-oriented. And in that sense, people with hope. Secondly, Somali people in the Horn of Africa, and particularly the Old Republic, the highly tolerant and flexible brand of Islamic practices. Islam that was very deep in their soul and yet was highly tolerant and extremely flexible, which coexisted with all ways of Somali tradition and Somali life. That has changed somewhat. Third, all Somali people, not of the present, had an enviable belief in talent and administrative fairness. Management of life and talent was something that Somali people recognized and saw it as a credit, whoever the person was or the community were. That's my point. Fourth, perhaps fifth, the Somali people also, in these early times, had a strong level of what the Italians, the Renaissance Italians, used to call dignità, or perhaps a closer translation, not quite as loaded as the Renaissance language, but close, dignity in English. But dignità is much more than the way we know dignity now in the English language. The dignity that and generosity which was recognized by other Africans around the continent. There goes the Somalis, great sense of dignity and pride, and very generous with other peoples. Africans and the rest of the world knew about this in terms of the Somali people. But most of all, and lastly, the Somali people had a very thriving and deep cultural creativity that was manifested itself through exquisite poetry, drama, dance, music, and song. These were characteristics that the Somali people were known very much for. Now, those are the old assets. My beginning argument to you, therefore, this afternoon, is that from the vantage point of the present, this afternoon, I will suggest, all these virtues have either greatly been eroded, and some of them are vanishing. What little that survives is, to put it very politely, is covered by a great deal of dross, thick dross, body. See, that's what dross means. Yeah. Consequently, it is now obvious, at least to me, that a revival, if not a resurrection, is unavoidable. If Somalis have any chance of regaining their self-worth among the world's peoples, that resurrection will have to take place. And to begin that long journey of recuperation, of rebuilding and resurrection, that urgent and monumental assignment I suggest to you this afternoon requires gatherings of this kind, this type of gatherings, in which truth-seeking, careful listening, rigorous and civilized discussion on difficult topics are always practiced. To accomplish that, I suggest to you, we must learn how to cultivate a mixture of reasoning intelligence, discriminating judgment, and mutual sympathy, if not love. A discussion of culture can therefore advance such a task, and a pursuit of a Somali Renaissance aiming at high excellence. In this context, I would like to acknowledge this afternoon someone whose outstanding and continuing contributions are the antithesis of this age of disillusion, resentment, and demeaning mediocrity. This is Brother Bashir Sheikh Umar God. Bashir Sheikh Umar God has at least four characteristics that I suggest most of you ought to take a note of. And these attributes is making him stand out in any crowd among Somalis when it comes to these kinds of Bashir Sheikh Umar God is a magnificent poet whose work touches many aspects of global and Somali life. So that's the first characteristic. And we could say a lot about that, but I don't have the time to elaborate on this. Second attribute of Bashir that makes him stand out in any Somali crowd is that he is an elegant and fluent writer in at least 3 languages at a very high octane level: Somali, English, and Arabic. Third, Bashir is also a paragon, an example of the cosmopolitan public intellectual with considerable courage and heft, weight. And then finally, Bashir has accepted a long time ago and embraced the call of learning as an essential part of his own very existence. His superb and pioneering biographical essay on the entrancing and peerless, the late Halima Khalif Maghol, published in the page of Bildan in 2014, attests to Bashir's exceptional literary sensibilities and creative gifts. So for those of you who want to pursue that, the first essay here is about the biography of Maghol, in which we hope later on will become a book. Now, having made those initial assertions, let me then move on to the substance of the lecture. Development and culture. Well, what is development? 2 basic definitions, and they reinforce each other. One is that development is a massive and perpetual project of the transformation of a society. All societies, and I'll come back to this at the end, all societies, including this one of the oldest industrial societies, the first industrial society in the world, right here, continues to struggle with the issues of development, of renewal. Things get old, they have to be renewed. Roads, railways, bridges, telephones, electrical systems, you name it. So development is something that all societies engage. It's a massive, perpetual, abadi, forever project of transformation of society. That's the first cut. The second point of development is that this effort must be applied in equal measure to the 4 paramount and highly interconnected dimensions of human existence. If you look at human life and you slice it up, there are really 4 important dimensions of human existence. Whatever society that you are talking about, whether it's Somali society, or we are talking about the British society, or whether you are talking about American society, you name it. And these are these 4 dimensions of human spheres of human existence. Environment, economy, politics, and culture. If you take those out of society, take the politics out, take culture out, take the environment out, take the economy out, there's nothing left. Hardly anything is left. So these to me are the central pillars of any kind of a society. Development takes place in all of them all the time. How to deal with environmental questions, whether it is erosion in the case of Horn of Africa and desertification, or whether here in cleaning up the rivers here. Yeah, I remember when I was the BBC, a young boy in the BBC, I remember the Thames River being so dirty that when you walk by it, you smell. It has been cleaned, I think, since, of course, I assume. But no society escapes the challenge of environmental questions. Always. In America, we are running into this all the time. And now, of course, global warming, the biggest one of them all. Massive change in the environment, which affects human life. Same thing with economy, sustenance, livelihood, and of course politics, organizing society, civil society, and then culture, which is our topic today. So I will not talk a great deal about the economy or the ecology or politics. I will concentrate most of my presentation, therefore, on this 4th sphere of human existence, which is the sphere of culture. What is culture? Okay. Second concept. Culture is equivalent to what the philosopher Wittgenstein, who used to teach at Cambridge from Europe, Wittgenstein called this form of life, culture as a form of life. That is sedimented habits and time-hollowed practices that people repeat again and again and again and again. That's part of their existence. This kind of a sedimented habits and time-hollowed practices is the source of what we call in the academy tacit knowledge. T-A-C-I-T, tacit knowledge. Something that is so deeply buried in the consciousness, in the consciousness of people. Tacit knowledge. And therefore a store of insight and cultural wisdom. The second element of culture is the formation of ideas. Culture is the formation of ideas. What Ibn Khaldun, the great Islamic philosopher and jurist, called habits of excellence. Yeah? Formation of ideas. Symbols that make it possible the virtue of self-command, that you can control your own habits. Independent thinking and robust intersubjectivity, mutual understanding of each other, intersubjectivity. This is the very distinct from enslavement to stagnant superstitions. Stagnant superstitions, something very important that Somalis have to think about. Because I will argue a significant part of the Somali people now suffer from stagnant superstitions. Prejudice that causes the mutilation of ignorance. Ignorance can mutilate the mind, and in the end, the society itself. So the formation ideas is against that kind of mutilation of society through ignorance. And then the third element of culture is in the realm of the aesthetic, where the artistic performance, the lady is here now, the artistic performance and the virtuosity is supreme. How he plays the oud at the virtuous level is supreme. None of us sitting here will be able to do that unless we spend, 60 years or more like him, and even that will require some initial talent that you have. It's not just a practice, you also have to have some gift that you can actually do something like this. So the realm of the aesthetic, where the artistic performance or virtuosity are supreme, is central to culture. An encounter with such a display of perfection has a number of somewhat contradictory consequences. If you sit in front of Hudaydi, or someone like him, or a great Abwan like Hadrawi, or Tima'at, now he's no more with us, or Hassan Sheikh, or people like that, you sit in front of them, at that level of perfection, of capacity, it creates a number of things that really are, I will argue to you, somewhat contradictory. One, that level of performance shocks us. At his peak, it shocks. Beauty at its form can shock you. If you see a beautiful woman, it shocks you. What's that? Look at that. The same thing with art. It shocks you. Which means, therefore, it shocks you because you are coming face to face with the intimidation of pure excellence. Excellence waa laga cabsado. Cabsi bay ku gelinaysa. That face-to-face encounter with excellence makes us speechless, silent.